And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is Sunday, February 18th at 8:17 p.m. This is Federico Lyons of States Rights Radio and
Seth Hancock of Seth Hancock Reports. And tonight's episode is a broad discussion on what is happening to our republic, from gun rights to gun control, from state electoral rights to a national electoral directive and other issues. And yeah, we're gonna, start with talking about the Second Amendment and gun rights, gun control, as there were a couple recent shootings that made headlines. There was that shooting at Joel Osteen's church in Texas, and then there was the shooting at the Super Bowl parade in Kansas City, and obviously. In response, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris already came out and demanding gun control laws. Biden's calling for a ban on assault weapons, and I'm not even sure what they call assault weapons were even involved in either of those shootings. I'm not positive, but obviously the standard going after assault weapons, high capacity magazines, and obviously politicians always react to these events saying, what do we need to do? And my response is, well, you're part of the problem. Politicians thinking that they need to react every time there's something that happens that hits headlines. And for me, the Second Amendment is pretty simple. It shall not be infringed. Politicians writing some words on a piece of paper saying you can't own this, you can't own that, is not going to change anything. This is a cultural problem. This is a problem with the morality of the people. This is not a problem with the guns. But, we always have to have this discussion every time there's a shooting.
well, it's unfortunate that there are these shootings, but that's what the government's there to investigate and prosecute whoever is the guilty party or parties. But it's also unfortunate that this happens in the middle of an election year. And of course, you get the debate from the left, the Democrats saying that they want gun control. Then you get debates from the right, the so-called right, the Republican Party or the Trump Republican Party, that they want less gun control. But yet again, remember, back in 2020, Trump did say that he wanted to control guns and, get the guns first, then take them to court. So that doesn't seem very fair and right to me. So you don't know where the Republicans really stand on this issue nowadays. But Democrats are hardcore and wanting gun control and really suppress the Second Amendment. So it's just unfortunate, Seth, that whenever there's something going on, there's, it's during an election season and we're going to have to hear from Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Trump or Nikki Haley and just, spew idiocy and, against the constitutional rights that are guaranteed. I mean, but again, something that I really want to bring on here is that the Second Amendment has nothing to do with guns. It says arms. Arms could be defined as, I guess, nuclear weapons. I guess as bazookas, knives, samurai swords, a Glock, Colt 38, whatever, a 38. So, it's defined as arms. So, what happened if there's a killer that is slashing people with a samurai sword? Is Congress going to ban all samurai swords? I think it's idiocy, and it's just the same charades every 2 years, every 4 years, and quite frankly, I'm just really tired of it.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, thinking about the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade, and there was a shooting there, which From what I'm getting is it was probably gang violence and a gang turf war that broke out near the Super Bowl parade that affected it. But thinking about parades, there was that attack on people I think it was in Wisconsin, where the guy drove his car into people. So should we ban cars? We can kind of see how ludicrous that is in a case of trying to ban cars because a madman used a car to run over people. But yet we still have this conversation on guns every time there's something, a shooting that takes off. And to me, I always think of, the problem, like I said, it's not the guns. We always have stats that come out. The left will take stats that they think can spin in their direction. The right will take stats that spin in their direction. And it doesn't matter to me what your stats say. I mean, I think of Mark Twain's quote that there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. The stats aren't what matters to me, because I know fundamentally the gun is not the issue. The weapons are not the issue. It's the people wielding the weapons. It's a cultural problem that we have right now. And a lot of it, I think, is because of the government. In many ways, I think they've created an entitled dependent society with our welfare state and everything like that. And that affects the culture adversely. And, people become more agitated and hostile because the government's stealing their money and giving it to other people. And then the justice system seems to go after people for low-level petty crimes, yet they let other people walk free who commit violent acts. The issue is never the gun. The issue is never the knife, the bat, the weapon of choice. It's the people. And to me, the standard is shall not be infringed. And so it doesn't matter what stats people can produce. We have a right. I have a right to keep and bear arms, whether it be a gun, it be a knife, whatever. I have the right to keep and bear arms to defend myself, not only from criminals, but from tyrants. I know that's... that when you have a big government like we have, it's not a pleasant thought to have to try and fight against tyranny. But that is what it's there for. It's to stave off against tyranny. It's your right. It's your right, your God-given right, based on your humanity. And so the government doesn't have the right to infringe on your rights. But we have to have this debate, and we have to have people screaming at each other with different stats that they produce. And it's easy for me. It shall not be infringed. So enough said.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's your right. It's my right. And if one of us ever, God forbid, I know we're not going to commit a crime, but again, if any of us commits a crime, then that's where the government comes in and investigates and prosecutes and sentences that person, whether it's you, me, or anybody else that will commit a crime, and all that. So, this individuals that commit a crime in Kansas City and the Joel Osteen Church, it's unfortunate that these accidents happen. It's very sad that people are going to get hurt. We don't want to see people getting hurt. But, it is up to the government to bring that to justice fairly and impartially and swiftly so it doesn't happen again. But to set off this tribal war of politics, and say, well, you're gun control, I'm gun rights, or you're for this or you're for that, tit for tat, it really must stop. we have to respect each other's rights and boundaries, and not infringe upon them, as Seth said. But also, when there's a crime committed, then you have to act swiftly and fairly to make sure the perpetrators are brought to justice. That's the whole point. Why, again, the federal government established the Department of Justice, and there's individual states that have a Department of Justice to bring justice into the culprits. So, but again, it's this tribal war of politics, tribal war of campaigns, where you see it, and of course, it's just, when are we going to really end this tribalism and just say to ourselves, you know what? This is not about the Second Amendment. This is not about, guns or knives. It's about that person who committed that crime. We must bring him to justice. We must see that justice will not fail the victims and everybody else. And let's not think about banning guns, setting regulations, federal regulations, and all that, because that's not the case. Look what's going on. I mean, Illinois, the city of Chicago, New York, the city of New York City, Washington, D.C., even Miami, Florida, has issues of gun control. And Miami, Florida the state of Florida is very gun friendly, and yet there are certain areas of Miami that is very dangerous. But if you carry a weapon, there's less likely of being a crime committed. Like in places like in Colorado, Montana, etc., etc. So, gun control is not the issue here, and you cannot solve it by denying my right just because some lunatic opened fire on another. And, it's not fair, it's not right, and we have to, this is a right that was established in 1789. It's still on the books. Just because, it crosses state lines doesn't mean that Congress has a right to regulate it. No, it does not. And neither does a state. If I cross over to New Jersey, why does New Jersey treat me as a criminal just because I carry a legal, it's legally bound gun? It's unfair. You should be able to cross state lines with no issues whatsoever. If you commit a crime, that's a different story. But if you're just traveling with your legal bounded weapon, there's no issue there. So this tribalism that's occurring right now, and we're going to hit the campaign trail, I just hope that it ends right here, right now, and we just think about what we need to think to bring these perpetrators to justice.
Yeah, and that's the role of government, is when crime has occurred, that you bring the people who have committed the crimes and created victims to justice. But the politicians will always come out and they'll say, "Oh, we'll write a new law that's going to protect people," and of course it's nonsense. You're writing some words on a piece of paper and saying, because we've been elected, that gives us some authority to tell you how to live your life, is not going to protect us. It just creates more problems. It just creates more angst and anger among people. When you have these, these worthless people who think that they're authority over you, telling you what to do. I mean, it's just... there are a lot of people who are not even big gun people who understand this, who, they might not own guns themselves, but, when the government tells them they can own a gun, it's like, well, the hell I can't. You can't tell me that. And that's, unfortunately, I don't think that's the attitude of most Americans today. And that's what we really need to get, that understanding among the population, among the people, that this is your right. I'm certainly not advocating that we force people to own guns. I just think you have a right to it. You have a right to own arms and keep and bear arms, and if you don't want to bear arms yourself, that's fine. Just don't think that somehow have authority to say other people can't either.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I don't own a gun. I've never owned a gun. I don't feel comfortable handling a gun. I would have to take a lot of training courses to deal with. But even so, I just don't feel comfortable. But I'm not going to deny your rights, Seth. If you keep it safely and securely and you know how to handle it and you're not going to go crazy, then yeah, I'm not going to stop you from getting that because it's your guaranteed right as well as other guaranteed rights in the Bill of Rights. It's one course that the Bill of Rights is for all states that enter into this union and its citizens to keep it. So just because I don't own it because I don't want to, doesn't mean that I'm going to say, well, if I don't have it, then Seth's not going to have it. No, I mean, I don't care if Seth has a gun I hope he doesn't have a bazooka. Well, I don't care if he has a bazooka, but just don't use it, take it on the field to use a bazooka. But, I'm not going to be selfish and says, well, if I don't own one, then he's not going to own one. No, that's not how it works. So, politicians today, they just like to create new laws after new things that's happening. And quite honestly, one good Barry Goldwater quote is that I come to Washington, D.C. not to pass laws, but to repeal them. There's too many laws on the books already for gun control or gun rights. There's only one gun right law in the books, and that's the Second Amendment. That's it. Regulations don't belong in the federal government. They belong within the states. And if states wants to regulate it, that's fine by me. I know I've said this before, but when the Parkland shooting happened here in South Florida, the Florida legislature got together and they increased the age from 18 to 21. I have no problem there. Now, if they would have increased it to 45 or 50 years of age, I do have a problem there because that's a restricting the age of a citizen, and I think that's unfair. But 18 to 21, that's a common sense law, and I have no problem with that. But legislation and regulation belongs at each individual state. What you cannot do, and sadly the city of Chicago, state of Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, etc., California, is that you're denying, you're restricting, and you cannot do that. That's a contradiction to the Constitution. So, quite frankly, I'm just tired of this. But again, this tribalism is going to happen. And then, right now we're focusing on Trump's new sneaker shoes at $200. Are you going to buy some sneakers from Trump, Seth?
No.
So
it wasn't $200, by the way. It's $400.
Oh, 400. That's I'm not gonna spend sneakers for that. But the good thing is that we're now focusing on sneakers for Trump. So as long as people focus on that, which again we should focus on the gun situation, but at the criminal that committed these crimes, not at the actual gun itself or arms itself. So. But, let's, if you want to focus on Trump sneakers or Trump something, hey, that's fine, but it's going to come back and, we'll see Kamala Harris speak against the NRA and just one last food for thought. The Second Amendment does not mean you have a right to hunt. It's not for hunting. It's not for self-defense. That's not what the Second Amendment is. It's not for self-defense. It's not for hunting. It's for the right to bear arms against a tyrannical government and against your rights. So whenever you hear the NRA or somebody close to the NRA say that it's for hunting and they see shooting a deer, no, that's not what the Second Amendment is for. Also, to correct Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens, the Second Amendment does not also give you the right to rob a bank. So whatever the way he said it in his dissent to DC versus Heller, he's incorrect too. It's not also to rob a bank. It's not to go hunting. It's for your own protection, your own rights against an intrusive government.
Yeah, and it's a check on government. It's and it's about the militia, and I know militia has a bad connotation, but improperly understood. All Americans should be part of the militia to, if we need to, fight back against invading forces or, your own government. I know it's not something we want to think of. I don't. I certainly do not advocate any. I'm as anti-war as it comes, so I am opposed to violence unless it's in protection of myself. I never believe in initiating force. I can only use force when force has been initiated on me. But I mean, and yeah, that's the thing is we've got too many people who think it's just about hunting, and by the way, I mean, the guns I've had in my life have always been for hunting because I come from a hunting family. I'm not somebody who thinks I need to carry a gun all the time, but I also see there might be a time where I feel I do need to carry a gun. I mean, we see chaos growing and a lot of it's media hyped, but and not real. But there could be a time where I do feel the need to carry a gun on me. I haven't personally in my life, but I can see a time where I need it. So I want that right to be there when I need it. But it's about being a check against a tyrannical government, and hopefully that tells the government, hey, let's not try tyranny, which we've obviously passed that point. But that's what you hope is that the Second Amendment is there to stop to tell the government, hey, let's not tread on people's rights to begin with. But unfortunately, we passed that time. But it's we just need to. We need to understand, one thing that you said was we don't need new laws. That's the wrong approach to all the things. We need to repeal most of the laws on the books need to be repealed, and we need to shut down unconstitutional agencies. We need to get the government out of areas that they never had authority to be in the first place. And that's the problem is we have too many laws, and we need to stop writing more laws and start repealing laws that are already in place.
Well, just one point I want to bring, Seth, is that I think in the term militia, I don't believe the founders, the framers, meant it as a people militia. If people, because I think that's one part of John Paul Stevens when he said in his dissent for DC versus Heller that he called the militia being a people militia. And I believe in U.S. versus Miller, Justice McReynolds also made that reference. But if people understood, and I'm just want to, I just want to bring this up, if the American people and certain Supreme Court justices really read this this amendment, it says a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. I mean, that sounds like a national army, a state army, but yet, again, I think the framers are not denying the right of an army or a state army, but also that army cannot take overpowering tyrannical policies and remove its the weapons of the people, whether it's a knife or a gun or whatever, or a rifle or whatever. I mean, because that's, you also have to go back to prior to the 1789, prior to 1787, the British Army was confiscating weapons from, the colonies, from several colonies in New York, particularly New York. So I think the way that I read it, and I don't know how you interpret it, but let's have a discussion about it. Is that I don't think it's a people militia. I don't think it's a Michigan militia, and I think that's also what many people have been misconstrued. Where you see the Michigan militia or the Illinois militia or Montana.
Well, I've always taken it that really. The militia, I guess I'd be on the opposite side, that the militia is the people to be well trained and prepared if, it's the, what was it, the Japanese general, I think who said why he attacked Pearl Harbor and not the mainland was because behind every blade of grass would have been the barrel of a gun in the mainland of America. It's, ultimately, it's up to the people to defend themselves. You cannot rely on the government to be your protector, your security. I mean, you want them to defend us from foreign attacks, and but ultimately, if an invasion were to happen and there was violence being taken on the streets by an invading army, you're ultimately up to yourself to defend yourself. I mean, it's so I guess it's hard to get into the entrance in the minute details, but I think every American should understand that ultimately your protection is up to you. You can't rely on police to save you. I mean, it's the old adage that when seconds matter, the cops are minutes away. But it's something I'm open to discussion on, though.
I say, no, you make a good point. No, you do. I mean, I think people, should organize, but yet I see it as, there's no denying for a national army, but yet that national army has no right to put infringement on that people's right to bear arms, whatever the arms are. Clearly should be defined by either Congress or each individual state. So, but no, that's open for discussion. So it's open to interpretation. As long as one day you don't come out and says, I agree with John Paul Stevens that we should ban guns. I'm happy. Let's not cross that bridge. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, I'm kind of. I think I'm starting to understand what your point was there and what John Paul Stevens is. Yeah, I think I agree with that point. I'm thinking too. Also, the founders warned against having a standing army. They didn't want, they didn't want us to have a standing army that was perpetually at war like we have today. But they had the war colleges. The Constitution provides for war colleges like West Point, and obviously the Air Force Academy was not thought of back when the Constitution was written, but I think that would apply to their desire to have war colleges as well. To have, so that America had people who had the knowledge of how to fight a war if one were to break out and we needed to defend ourselves. But they didn't want us to be a nation that was perpetually at war. And so they warned against standing armies. And so I think the point is that people would generally want to be trained. I think people should want to at least know how to use guns, even if you don't want to. Even if you don't want to own a gun, you should know how to use it in case there was a time that you needed it. And the war colleges were there to kind of have generals. If we were invaded by, let's say, France, that we'd have generals ready to, raise up an army to fight off the attack, and then the army would dissipate because we won. And I think back to what you were making the point is the individual right to keep and bear arms, and John Paul Stevens was kind of saying as the militia, and I think I get your point on that and would agree.
Yeah, John Paul Stevens never really saw eye to eye on many things, and I think one of them was also on the campaign finance reform, but we can get to another discussion. But yeah, I think that's mainly there should be a standing army, and people should be also regulated. But I think it should not. The standing army should not infringe on people's rights, and people has a right to bear arms and learn how to use those arms, either through West Point or the Naval Academy or by itself. And all that, but. It's an ongoing topic, and I'm sure we'll be back as election season clinches on to see which grandpa or young woman will constitute the government. But another topic that's also I want to bring to attention again, because it's really troubling me, and I'm sure it's troubling Seth as well, is this idea of what's going on with our electoral laws by state and issues of that matter, where, Trump wants the Supreme Court to dictate what the electoral laws are. Democrats want to pass a certain Voting Rights Act to set standards for all states, a national standard. And every time I hear that, I just cannot. I just lose my nerve. I just get upset. I don't get upset, but it's just very unnerving that people don't understand the concept of this republic. They really don't. It's not 50 different countries. It's 50 sovereign states united under one republic based on the Constitution. And what kills me more is that I'm reading the oral arguments of Trump versus Anderson, that typically it's going to see if Colorado wants to ban Trump from office. And right now, the justices in the Supreme Court, the on one side they're using Section 3 as a qualification based on Article 2 to ban Trump from running for office due to the insurrection. I get that. But again, I see their point. I think I see now. I think I'm clearly seeing their point now. States are the ones who are defining the qualifications of a candidate to set their electoral standards and their electors. And Trump just wants Congress or the court to overrule that. If you overrule that, you are overruling Article 2. I'm reading, two Supreme Court justices, Elena Kagan. She says, but maybe to put it most boldly, I think that the question that you have to confront is why a single state should decide who gets president of the United States, who gets to get president of the United States. And the other one is Justice Barrett. And it's true. I just want to push back a little bit on, it's a national thing because this court will decide it. It's neither a national thing, and the reason why we have states deciding on what their electors, because it's guaranteed through the second article. So that type of ignorance from one from the left and one from the right, or one liberal, one conservative, scares me, because people are gonna start preaching for a national directive, and I don't want that. I don't want a national directive. So, I think this is a very important issue that we have to discuss and tell the American people that we have to let states choose their electors and choose their electoral standards without any federal government interference.
Yeah, and it's again, another one of the issues, like every issue basically is, people see a problem, whether a problem exists or not, and they say we need a federal law. And, there used to be this saying, like when, some kid got his feelings hurt, you'd say, don't make a federal case out of it. And that's the problem is we make a federal case out of everything. Today. And it's like when it comes to elections, there's always these calls for a national voter ID law, which I'm not opposed to states instituting their own voter ID system, but I am absolutely opposed to the federal voter ID law. It's not the place for the federal government. And we need to stop looking towards the centralized Leviathan federal government to write new laws, and elections are no different. It's just it's got to be left up to the states. I think the Supreme Court. This is a case. I mean, you look at all the cases that the Supreme Court refuses to take, where they probably should take up a case, but then you've got a case like this where the Supreme Court probably shouldn't have taken it in the first place. And, I don't know what the rulings will be, but in all likelihood, it's going to lead to more federal, whatever the decision is probably going to lead to more federal oversight. And that's the last thing we should want.
Yeah, as much as I despise Marbury versus Madison on the creation of judicial review, there are certain things that, the courts have judicial review on it. This is not one of them. This is not one of them that the courts have that right for judicial review. On other cases, there is on equal justice on the law based on the Fourth Amendment with Loving versus Virginia, Brown versus Board. Those type of cases, yes, there is judicial review. On executive power or legislative power, yes, they do have judicial review. But, depends on judicial review. But, and we can get to that in a little bit later on. But, on this thing, courts don't need judicial review in this one. And, to see one person involve the courts if it's its own little personal lawyer, it upsets me. And it really does really, boil my blood to see this. And, also the ignorance that they're inflicting on it to the American people will buy anything they tell them to. For example, I read a statement from Trump's lawyer saying that, they're doing this, Congress has a right to enforce the 14th Amendment, and he brings out the Enforcement Act of 1870. Well, to be honest, the Enforcement Act of 1870 was to enforce the 15th Amendment, not the 14th Amendment. And I was surprised that no justices saw that or corrected that person. He's talking about the 14th, but then he's talking about the 15th. What's going on here? So, it's unnerving to see, lawyers and politicians make up things to spread lies and misinformation. And I just, that's one of the reasons why I just want the Supreme Court not to make a ruling on this and just let it lie and let it go back to Colorado for that, because that's where it belongs. It belongs in Colorado. It doesn't belong in the Supreme Court. And as much as I despise Trump, does he have a right to run for office? Yeah. Can he be banned? If he wins, can he be banned from serving from office? That's what the 14th Amendment says. Yes, Congress can remove him from office being an insurrectionist. I think he is an insurrectionist. I think he's cited, yeah. And I think Congress has a right to ban him from serving. I don't know if Congress has a right to stop him from running. But yet again, as I said earlier, states are defined to make up the qualifications of a candidate or their electors. So this is something new. I see no problem of making these qualifications, and I just want the American people to know that what Colorado's doing is quite normal. What Texas is doing, if they want to remove Biden from the ballot, or Florida, I don't care. It's not like he's going to win those electoral votes, so what do I care? So this is totally normal. This is nothing out of the ordinary. So the American people need to understand that.
Yeah, and all of these things, like the chaos that this creates, this hyper divided nation that we have, it all stems from what this flawed idea that people think the president is just the most powerful man in the world, and they believe that the president should be the most powerful man in the world, and they believe that the government has all this power. Like if we had a government that remained within its constitutional authority, we wouldn't be so divided. The government wouldn't be making all these rules and dictating how we live our lives, and we wouldn't be in this place where we're at, where we think like these election laws and what's happening in Colorado is like a threat to you because, I'm a Trump supporter, so you're not letting me vote for Donald Trump. If we had a limited government, the government that the founders framed and wanted us to have, we wouldn't put so much importance on these elections, and we wouldn't be so divided. And nobody seems to want to address that. They want to keep playing this Game of Thrones that American politics has become, where it's Democrat authoritarians versus Republican authoritarians. I'm for no authoritarians. How about we try limited government again, and how about we focus on getting the government out of all the areas that they were never supposed to be in on, and get them to focus on the very limited authority that they're supposed to have. And instead we focus on these types of electoral battles that are just making the government bigger, and that should be the opposite of what we're doing.
And you're absolutely right on that. It's we wouldn't be having this discussion if the federal government was not as big as it is now, as it once was in the beginning. But one thing that I want to also point out is there's this thing of my right to vote. My vote should be counted for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and where in the Constitution it says that your vote will be counted. You have the right to vote. You will go vote. Again, if that candidate's not on your ballot, well, then your job is with the state legislature and your state legislator, and, ask him why you removed Trump from the ballot. But yet again, this right to vote and this right of the people and this democracy, that really just boils my blood of anger. We are not a democracy. The people don't rule. This thing of individual rights and people, let me backtrack. We have individual rights. We have those type of rights to protect our individualism. But voting rights does not counter that. The right to vote didn't come up until after the Civil War to protect the newly freed slaves, the right to vote. So they have the right to vote. Now, the way that they were suppressed in the Jim Crow era and the segregation era, that's wrong. But they have the right to vote. They will vote. Now, again, voters have to follow instructions. And if they don't vote according to those instructions, then their vote will not be counted. It's that simple. Sandra Day O'Connor, Justice O'Connor, may she rest in peace. I rarely agree with her, but in Bush versus Gore, she said that why don't we go to that standard where voters are supposed to follow instructions, for goodness sakes? Why can't we go to that standard? The voter has to follow instructions. Then your vote will be counted. If you don't follow instructions, your vote will not be counted. If Trump's not on the ballot, well, then your vote will not be counted if you wrote in Donald Trump, or if you try to do something that candidate will not, then vote for somebody else. Write in somebody else, but you have to follow instructions. But this whole idea of we are a democracy and it's a threat to democracy, I've heard it from Al Gore. I'm hearing it from Nigel Farage and other conservative pundits like Tucker Carlson. That just, are they Wilsonian Democrats? Are they Wilsonian progressives that we are now preaching democratic, Wilsonian Democrats, Wilsonian democratic policies? No, we're not. We never have been. This is not a democracy. This is a republic. You have your right to vote because Congress gave it to you, and that's fine. But if you don't vote the right way, if you don't vote the way that the instructions are set, then your vote will not be counted. End of story. But, this thing of, the right to vote is a people's right. No, it's not. It's not a right. It shouldn't be a right. It should be a privilege, as I think Seth has stated before. It's a privilege, not a right. And you have your right to vote. You will go make your vote. But if you don't vote properly with the instructions set forth, then your vote will not be counted.
Yeah, and we always get these kind of these ideas pushed out there that we want as many people voting as possible, and you know what? Honestly, there are a lot of people I don't want voting because they aren't informed. They've decided that they just want free stuff, and this politician's offering me free stuff, and I'm going to go vote for him. And there are a lot of people that I don't want to vote because they intentionally are uninformed. And then there are people like myself and you who are likely not going to be voting in this election because we are informed, and we see how corrupt and how useless voting in federal elections is. And then we get the people saying that, oh, you guys don't have a right to complain then. And no, I do have the right, the George Carlin bit. I did not vote for the tyrants who are taking away our liberties, so I do have a right to complain. But this is, we put all this stock into voting as if this is the penultimate right, and it's not. It's a right to free speech, press, religion, and redress the government and petition the government, and to assemble. It's a right to keep and bear arms. It's a right to be free from unwarranted search and seizures. These are the rights that should matter to us. But unfortunately, voting becomes the penultimate right, and it doesn't matter if you're on the so-called right or the so-called left. This is all that people care about, and this is the thinking that we need to change. We need to get back to wanting our individual liberties, our civil liberties, to be protected, and voting should be kind of a secondary issue. Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to just getting the government back into its limited role that the Constitution defines, and that's what we need to be focused on.
Yeah, and to also quote George Carlin, you're right. You're right. We are well informed. We know who the candidates are. We don't agree with them. I stopped agreeing with them since 2008, where I saw Barack Obama and John McCain both preach for federal funding for TARP, for the Troubled Asset Relief Program, to bail out Wall Street and bail out the banks. Both of them were talking the same language. I'm like, really? So what's the difference between one and the other? One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. Why should I waste my vote on the same voice? It's useless. It's futile. So just because I didn't vote doesn't mean that I still don't have a right to complain. I do have a right to complain because I'm not giving a fair choice to hear my voice, because they're not, those two candidates are preaching the same thing. And the problem is that, on both sides, we saw it with Barack Obama, then we saw it with Donald Trump. If you recall back in 2012 when Obama ran against Romney, this young lady, well, not young lady, but this woman came up on the news and says, I'm voting for Obama. Why? Because she got an Obama phone. And Obama gave her a government phone, with government money, a cell phone. And all that, and that's how you buy, and that's how people are buying votes so they can vote for you. Donald Trump did it with the COVID relief fund. He sent out those stimulus checks to get his votes in certain states in Mississippi and Texas and all that. So I only got one check in 2020. That was it. But even one check was not going to make me vote for Donald Trump, because I don't agree with whatever his politics are. I don't think he has politics. I think it's just rent and rival. But, that's mostly what people do, is they buy votes. Either it's an Obama phone or a stimulus check, and it's not, it's not right to buy votes like that. But of course, it's not their money. It's my money going to that lady, giving her an Obama phone. And then 2 years later, that same Obama phone lady turned out that she became a Republican because when she got the bill for the phone, she had to pay for the bill. Well, I mean, sweetheart, it ain't for free. You're going to have to pay for it. And now she became a Republican. Now she became a Trump Republican and is waiting for that stimulus check from the COVID. And now she's probably an Reform Party member. Who the hell knows? But, the point is that, people nowadays, they will be bought for that vote, and they're not going to buy me because I'm seeing both parties, and both parties speak the same language of bull crap. And that's not for me. So in this election as well, I mean, Trump versus Biden, I'm sure both of them will say one thing. Will say for gun control, they won't say for gun rights. But yet again, Trump has always spoken for gun control. So I'm really not gonna pay attention on even Nikki Haley. I'm not gonna pay attention to her. So yeah, I guess this year alone, I'm gonna have to abstain again because neither candidate speaks the language that I want them to speak. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to just roll up the sleeves and just stay home and, don't vote.
Yeah, I continue to have no intentions of voting in the federal election, and we'll see if there's any state and local people worth voting for in my election here in Illinois. But the voting is not the penultimate right. It's a right to free speech, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to be secure in our person papers and effects, and these are the rights that we should be focusing on, and instead we just focus on making sure our guy is on the ballot, and and it only matters to them. It's a threat to democracy when their guy is not allowed on the ballot. But obviously they never stand up when third party candidates get denied ballot access. That's perfectly fine to them, and that's not a threat to democracy. Well, it just kind of illuminates the hypocrisy of our whole system.
Yeah, and in this case that they're listening right now, Justice Gorsuch, when he was a judge in Colorado, he voted to ban a candidate from the Colorado ballot because he was a third party, and I think he was a non-U.S. citizen. I think he was a U.S. citizen, but there was something that Gorsuch denied his participating in politics, and again, the legislature gave that to the courts of Colorado to do that. They can do it for Trump. So you're right. And there's where that tribalism politics takes place, where, oh, my guy is not allowed on the ballot. That's a threat to my democracy or our democracy. Oh, but you know what? Libertarians, you sit down, or Constitution Party candidates, we don't care about you, but my guy needs to be there, or it's a threat to our democracy. Enough with the hypocrisy, enough with the tribalism hypocrisy that is just makes me sick to my stomach. And so, again, we're probably going to continue talking about this, and, probably in the next coming months, we'll probably hear Senator Schumer come with a gun control bill again, pass the Senate, get killed in the House, this little charade of politics, and then, we'll see what happens with Trump versus Anderson. But it's elections nowadays. Well, I take it back. Elections have always been tribalism politics. I wouldn't say the first and second elections were, but I think the election of 1800, the election of 1824, that was a start of tribalism politics, and really, and moving to the present tense. So, enough already. Just follow the Constitution and vote for the Constitution. Don't vote for a candidate just because he looks great with the hair or he looks sharp or charismatic. Don't do that. Vote with the Constitution in your pocket, not with a candidate staring at you.
Yeah, and really inform yourself on the issues and inform yourself on the actions that, and this is the problem with Republicans is, even Donald Trump, who, Donald Trump has said stuff that I agree with, but then he says something the next line that completely undermines what he just said that I agreed with. And, look at his actions. So, Donald Trump will talk about, hey, he's the greatest Second Amendment guy. And yet he's the one who used executive orders to go after our Second Amendment. So don't let these people just talk at you. You hold them accountable for, the words that they say. So when Donald Trump says he's so pro Second Amendment, remind him of all of his actions against the Second Amendment. He is not for the Second Amendment. He's a liar. Inform yourself and be ready to hold whoever the president is accountable. This is the big problem, is we don't hold these. We vote for our team. And if our team gets in power, we just let them do whatever they want, and we don't hold them accountable. Regardless of who you vote for, always hold whoever is in office accountable, and hold them accountable to the Constitution. And just get out of the tribalism and start thinking for yourself.
Yeah, with that being said, let's keep on seeing what happens next in the coming months, and we'll be back talking with more issues. I know we sound like a broken record, but sometimes a broken record, itchy and scratchy and irritating, but it will grab your attention, and that's what I'm trying to, and Seth and I are trying to, and Cody as well, trying to inform. Cody was not with us at this moment. Hopefully will join us next Sunday. But Seth and I and Cody want to be scratchy and irritating to get your attention and, start listening to the Constitution and not to charismatic candidates. So that being said, have yourself a great week ahead, and we'll be back next Sunday, and you also have a good night.
Good night.